Get your sports talk with a big dose of comedy, all the way from the bench. It's the Benchwarmers Show, benches. So you like sports, do you? What if I told you that I got some fire for real that will give you the modern spin on your dad's sportscast? Well, it's the Benchwarmers Show, and you can listen to it each and every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard on Sports Talk Channel on Spreaker. Benchwarmers has the funniest hosts in Terry, the Guru, and Lee.
I think you have to take a WD-40.
Or defense like a vegan running from kids. Give you all of the commentary on these
40, inside the 30,
and those.
Checks down to Joe.
So tune in so you don't miss a thing. They're waiting for you, benches.
Hey everybody, do you love pro wrestling? Do you love interviews of your favorite wrestlers, past and present? Well, wait no longer. Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh, have been added to Sports Talk Channel. That's right, every Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. Don't miss it. Be there.
Tired of the same sports shows with pre-written lines? Tired of sports shows that are scared to say what's really on their mind? Then tune into Championship Circle, hosted by Cordell Bowser, one of the newest sports shows of the new decade. Tune in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:30 p.m. on sportstalkchannel.com. Also can be found on Spotify, iTunes, and any other major.
We are live. Welcome to a brand new edition of Between the Links on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. And tonight we are live on the Loudmouth MMA YouTube page. My name is Mike Heck. I'm your host, and we are coming off a big weekend in combat sports with Tyson Fury's amazing performance against Deontay Wilder, the UFC in Auckland, New Zealand, with that banger of a main event between Dan Hooker and Paul Felder. We had 2 Bellator events. Even Submission Underground took place on Sunday. So there's lots to watch over the weekend, lots to discuss on the show this week as we get ready for the UFC's trip to Norfolk, Virginia this coming Saturday. We're going to add some elements to this week on Between the Links for those watching on the YouTube channel. I know we started a little bit later than we anticipated, but it is what it is. We'll get into all of that stuff in a moment. But first, let us introduce this illustrious panel. First, Mr. Keith Schillen is here. You know he's ready to go. How are you, Keith?
I'm excellent. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We have Mr. Davidson Baker here, and there's this narrative that there's this feud between us, Davidson, and frankly, I have no idea where that comes from at all. How are you?
I don't know, but I think it's coming from somewhere. One of the guys that's looking like Peter Parker that's in this abyss right now.
Actually, I do know where that narrative comes from. It comes from John Franklin, who is filling in for our resident Adam Oates, Craig Allen, who ditched us for a church league hockey game. John, thank you for joining us. It always makes things quite a bit more interesting when you're on the panel, sir.
Mike, it was my understanding we were going to wear costumes. I must have missed an email. I'm going to take this thing off because it weighs 40 pounds and my legs are killing me. And I have a rematch clause in my contract, so if I lose because of it, I'll be back on Between the Links before you know it. There was no Loudmouth MMA recap show this week. I am contractually obligated, based on the contract I signed with Kyle Steele, to be on 2 shows a week. Here I am. I am lawyered up if I have to contest this contract with Kyle, but I'm ready to roll.
Wow, what an introduction that was. And our special guest this week, as you can see, joining the panel for the first time, part of a plethora of different websites covering the sport of mixed martial arts and other sports as well, including bjpen.com, mymmanews.com, and so many others. Cole Shelton is here. How are you, Cole?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great. It's great to have you here. And for those who are somewhat familiar with the show, the rebuttal rule, as always, is in full effect. Gentlemen, you can invoke that clause once per show in the private chat you have here. And for those who are new to the show, the scoring is going to be based on a 10-point must system, just like in MMA. 10 points goes to the winner, 9 for everyone else. Now, for all you guys and gals who are going to end up watching this, this is where you come in. Hell, this is the first time we're doing this live, so we'll see where this goes. But if you are watching and you hear these answers, make sure you type in the old chat here who you think should get the 10 points with these questions. Ultimately, I'm trying to control this chaos, so I have the final say, but just respond with who you think won. Just throw out a first name in there. You can throw in a how and a why as well if you'd like, and we'll start eliminating these guys after 4 questions until we get to the finals. But let's get right into this thing. Let's talk about the terrific main event between Dan Hooker and Paul Felder on Saturday in Auckland, New Zealand. It was arguably the best fight of the year so far in the UFC. And in the end, after a 25-minute war, Dan Hooker gets the nod via split decision. It was a super close fight. It wasn't a robbery. That's a word we're going to be diving into later on in the show. But Keith Schillen, you're up first this week. How did you score the fight between Hooker and Felder? Did the two judges who scored it for Hooker get it right, or did the one judge who scored it for Felder get it right, and why?
Well, I scored at 48-47 for Felder. I gave him the second, the fourth, and the fifth round. I gave Hooker the first and the third. I thought that the American landed the harder shots. That said, I don't really have an issue with the decision. I think there was one decisive round in the entire fight, and I think that one was the first round for Hooker. And even that, I don't think was extremely decisive. I actually understand how Hooker won. I mean, he outlanded, if you go by it, he outlanded Felder in significant strikes in the first, third, and fifth round. They had the same amount in the second round. Only one round did Felder land more significant strikes. Now, I'm going to sidetrack for a second. This is my point that not all significant strikes are equal, because I think that Felder landed harder punches. And if a guy lands a jab and another guy lands a crushing overhand right, they shouldn't be scored the same when you count significant strikes. That said, going back to why I understand why people think Hooker won. I mean, he's the only one to get a takedown. And the biggest thing, he's the one who did the most damage. I mean, Felder's face was showing it after the very first round on through the rest of the fight. And then most of all is every time he lands a punch.
10 seconds.
Every time he lands a punch, the New Zealand crowd was going crazy for him. So that's going to obviously influence the judges. So I got no issue with Hooker getting the win. It was extremely close.
Davidson, what do you think?
Hard to encapsulate anything other than exactly what Keith just said. A lot of what he said is what I'm going to say. I mean, I gave Hooker the first two and gave Felder the last three, 48-47 for the Irish Dragon. And rounds 3 to 5 were really close. I thought 1 was pretty decisive for Hooker. I kind of thought 4 was somewhat decisive for Felder. Round 5, a lot closer, obviously, and Hooker going with the takedown a la Johnny Hendricks in the first Robbie Lawler fight style type of thing, a round swayer, for lack of a better term. But it's the same kind of deal here. Hooker gets him down late, looked to work as much as he could on top with the allotted time left. But it wasn't a robbery to me at all either, and we're going to get into the word robbery more a little bit, and I'll shine some light as to why. But, I mean, I was fine with it, and either man winning would have been fine with, I believe, everyone or just about everybody. And quite frankly, we all knew it was going to be Hooker's anyway when it was down in Auckland anyways, if it was going to go to the scorecard. So I don't have a huge problem with it, but it was a close fight between two really good fighters.
John, like Davidson said, it was a close fight. And in my opinion, the real winners were us and the fans who got to watch those two warriors battle it out in the octagon. They both overcame some adversity, and they left absolutely everything in that octagon. So with that said, in your eyes, who won that fight?
Mike, you like themes. The whole panel likes themes. The people demand themes. So 90s hip-hop is the theme. So let's start with hit you with no delaying, so what you saying, yo? That's what these two guys did. They hit you with no delaying. Put your hands where my eyes can see by Busta Rhymes. I gave it 3 rounds to 2 for Daniel Hooker. I thought he won the first 3, not decisively. This wasn't a decisive fight. I think Felder tried to steal around at the end. Can't remember if it was the second or third, but he had a nice flurry to end the round. I like stats. Craig likes stats. I feel obligated that I'm in his spot. I should do stats. When I look at striking stats, I don't look at the total number. I look at the percentages, right? How much – I mean, total number is important unless you get blown out, but I like percentages, right? First round, Hooker hit on 52%. Second round, 60%. Third round, 61%. He didn't drop under 50% until the fourth round. I thought he was a more effective striker. I thought he was doing more of what he wanted to do in all the first 3 rounds. Then I think Paul Felder came on. I don't want to fall into the false narrative that just because Felder wore the damage worse than Hooker did, that means that Hooker was more effective. I just think he was landing better shots and more of them.
Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, I had 48-47 Hooker. I had Hooker 1-3-5. I thought, like as Keith said, only round 1 I thought was the only real definitive round. But again, with just the striking, I thought Hooker threw the more volume. He had the harder shots, and just percentage-wise, he was landing a lot more of the shots that he threw. I think, too, that I know it shouldn't play into the factor, but I think it does, is whenever Hooker landed, you heard the crowd pop. Like, you have the energy from the arena that when Hooker lands something big, like, it seems bigger just because he's getting all the cheers. And I think too that like Hooker was just the one coming forward a lot. He was the one. He had the harder shots. He was throwing more. I think Hooker won, but again, this isn't a robbery. If you scored for Felder, like I could see how you scored for Felder, but I thought 4 rounds could have went either way. I just thought round 1 is the only one for Hooker, but I scored for Hooker.
Yeah, it was good fighting, Cole. I kind of want to go back to you for a moment if I could, because at the end, Paul Felder teases retirement. He has a 4-year-old daughter who he's very close with, and it's tough leaving her for these fights, especially for a week at a time. And as a parent myself, I completely get where he's coming from. That said, do you think we see Felder compete in the octagon again?
I think we do. I think we saw his coach and manager after say that his retirement he isn't for sure. Like he's going to think about it. I think he's going to fight in. I think he's going to fight in the States where it's not going to be a huge travel away from his kid. Even if he doesn't fight again, he has a lot of income coming from the broadcast, but he's still not that old. He's still top contender at lightweight where he only needs 1-2 wins and he's right back up there. Like I think a match against Al Iaquinta, they were supposed to fight at 223 before Iaquinta stepped in to fight Khabib. That's a fight that makes sense. Both of them are struggling. Both of them are coming off losses. Like ranking wise, it makes sense. So I think we'll see Felder again. But if we don't, like he's set for with all his jobs.
John, what do you think? Do you think Paul Felder comes back?
Mute, buddy.
Mute.
You're
Still
muted. He said, "Oh, come on."
What's going on? Who brought the rookie here? I think Paul Felder will be back. I do not think it will be a return of the Mac, but I do think that he'll be back. I think he likes being in the limelight too much. I think he does have a good job outside of the cage. I don't think those jobs are quite as illustrious as people seem to think they are. They probably pay okay, but Paul Felder's not DC. He's not Dominic Cruz. He's not getting that kind of money. So I think that he'll be back. I think he needs to keep his skills sharp, and the guy likes to fight. No one fights like Paul Felder that doesn't love fighting, and I think that he's going to miss it.
I've struggled with this. I think he's going to miss it as well, but I think he was dead serious in the octagon after the fight when he said he missed his 4-year-old as well, and I think that is an integral part as to what's going to happen with Paul Felder going forward. I am one of the only people in this network. I know there's more than one of us, but I'm one of the only people that do not have offspring, do not have little me walking around anywhere. So I don't know these feelings and I can't sympathize with them. However, at the end of the day, and yes, thank God for that, maybe so. At the end of the day, it seems like it seemed to me like I believed him when he said what he said about his child after the fight as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he came back, but how many times he does fight again, I think that's the real question.
And we rounded off with Keith. Do you think we see Paul Felder back? You're a parent. You have some little Keiths running around. So, what's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I want to go after Cole and John because they both was talking about Daniel Hooker having more volume. It's actually not true. Paul Felder actually threw 9 more punches than Daniel Hooker did. Yeah, I mean, do I think he's going to come back? I mean, how many guys don't come back that they say they retire? I mean, Forrest Griffin was a guy that was still kind of the top of his game that didn't come back. That's the first one that came to mind. There's not many other guys. I mean, we've seen it. But I think the UFC will go up to him, tell him that the world is his. I think Paul Felder will sit out for a little while, say that his minds are playing tricks on him. He'll see that staying away from the fight game will be a little too juicy for him, and then he'll get back in there because it's all about the creed.
All right. I thought we were going to get a lot more out of you, Keith, but well done. With that being said, Davidson is going to jump off with the first 10 points of the night. It was a good opening round. As we head to the second question, and I feel like this is something that needs to be discussed. Let's go back to the word robbery for a second, because even with close fights like Jones and Reyes, and again with Hooker and Felder on Saturday, that word robbery gets thrown out so much more now than it did, say, 4 or 5 years ago. So I want to get your input on this, gentlemen. Davidson, we're going to start with you. Why do you think the word robbery is thrown out so often and used so loosely these days, like even in coin flip fights like the one we saw in the UFC Auckland headliner?
I'm not so sure, to be definitive, Mike, but if one thing is for sure, I know you've taken issue with it, this term being, tossed around like a rag doll in the past couple of weeks, or at least it seems that way. And I don't know definitively why it is thrown around as often as it is. If I had to take a stab at it, I'd say it's maybe the shortcut of a way or the lazy way out for a fan to say that if I were a judge, I would have had the other guy winning. You can just say the word robbery and you get your entire point across. I mean, when someone wants to get their opinion across that they scored the fight for the loser, you can just say robbery away like it's nothing and you don't even think anything of it. I think that's probably what it is. I even tweeted a GIF of a masked GIF. I'm not here for the debate about it, but of a masked man holding a gun at a cash register, robbery, to signify after it, I scored it for Felder. I think Hooker's about to get this scorecard nod, but I didn't actually think it was like a robbery. Like I said, it was a close fight between two really good fighters. And I just thought that the man that should have got his hand raised if I were in that seat didn't. And that's the only reason why I said that.
John Franklin, why is this word being thrown around so much? Why is it the loosest word in MMA right now?
Son, they shook because ain't no such thing as halfway crooks, scared to death, scared to look. Because they think they won something and it got taken away from them. They don't care if it's a close fight. They think they won. They think them, their fans, their corners, everyone is kicking mad flavor in their ear that they won, so they think that's what it is. You know, I understand where it's coming from because they're only looking at it from their perspective. If you thought that you won a fight and all the things that are like, it's not that you're being robbed of the fight. You're being robbed of the future. You're being robbed of everything that would have come with winning that fight. The next fight, moving forward, you know, just because it was a close fight doesn't mean you just go, oh well, back to the drawing board. We both gave it our best. If you think you won and something's taken away from you, well, of course you think it's a robbery.
Oh, okay. I thought we had some more. We haven't even had to go to the 10-second warning at all here. This is crazy. We're going to move on to Cole here. Cole, we've seen, you know, actual robberies in MMA. I think Diego Sanchez and Martin Kampman comes to mind. Machida Shogun 1 is another that comes to mind. But, you know, these others that we're talking about from the last couple of weeks, these aren't robberies. Why do people keep saying they are?
I think part of it is the lack of fans knowing how judges score fights, and I think it's a lot of a bias for their favorite fighters and the commentary. Like we see time and time again, the commentary, it seems like they have a huge bias. Like Felicia Spencer, Chris Cyborg, Felicia Spencer was not even in that fight. It wasn't even close. And Rogan kept on saying, oh, here we go. Like Spencer's looking really good. This last fight, Jones-Reyes, I thought Jones won. Again, Rogan thought just because Reyes was doing so well that it seems just, if you're listening to it, you're a casual fan, you hear Rogan saying, oh, this person's doing so well, you're going to think, oh, they're winning their rounds. I think that's part of it. But again, like, I just think robbery, like, it's just such an easy term, as Davidson said, to throw away. Instead of trying to explain why you think they won, they just go, oh, that's a robbery. And then your kind of conversation's over with. But given I have a few more seconds of my time, too, I'd like to Keith. Hooker actually outlanded Felder. If you look at UFC stats, he had 133, Felder at 119. Significant strides, Hooker at 122, Felder at 110. So that's it.
Wow. Cole didn't even use the full minute. He used his last 10 seconds to call Keith out a little bit. And Keith, it is now your turn to answer this question about the word robbery, and feel free to use your time however you'd like.
Well, I'll go right back at him because he said their stats wrong, because you guys are talking about the volume and how much they threw. That's what I said. The guy who threw more strikes was Paul Felder. Okay. As far as this question, why does the word robbery get thrown around? The word robbery gets thrown around because MMA fans are a bunch of idiots. Next question.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank God John Franklin is here. I never thought I'd say that in the history of the show, but alas, we are here. We have our first rebuttal of the night. It is from Mr. John Franklin himself. So throw us the noise, John. We are ready.
Just hit the east side of the BTL on a mission trying to find Mr. Cole Shell. Mr. Shelton, here's my issue with what you said about MMA fans not being knowledgeable about judges. Judges aren't knowledgeable about judges. So, yeah, I would call a fight a robbery if I was a fan, too, if I know these guys screw it up half the time. So how can I count on what they're going to do when I'm seeing fights that I think are clearly for Dominic Reyes and others not going their way? I can't have some judge preaching to me what he thinks he saw when they blow the number of fights that they blow. So, yeah, you can take a shot at MMA fans if you want, but also take a shot at judging because it sucks worse than fans.
Cole, what would you like to say in response?
Well, yeah, the judges, that's a whole other conversation. The judges aren't good. There's a lot of good judges like Sal D'Amato, Chris Lee, like a lot of the usual names. I think judges get thrown out of the bus a lot too. Like the Joe Solis, there was one bad judge in Texas. when was the last bad real judge scorecard you can remember? Like, I don't think they happen as often as everyone thinks. I think judges are competent enough. There are some bad ones, but the judges, I think that's a whole other thing that they obviously need a lot of work. But I don't know. It's hard because the judges, like, there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones. Just like any job you're going to see, there's going to be good people at a job and a lot of bad people at a job.
Well, my pushback to that would be who's a person who can be counted on to adequately judge these fights. I'm looking at the media scores, right? I'll count myself in this group. I'll count Cole in this group, right? Drake Riggs, Eddie Mercado, Junkie, and Dominic Durnalot, whoever he is, all scored it for Hooker. Me and Cole both scored it for Hooker. Everybody else that I'm looking at scored it for Felder. So if you want to tell me that Barry Foley, Howard Hughes, and David Letheby are more connected than all those people to the sport of mixed martial arts and watch more fights, maybe not.
All right. I like it. First rebuttal of the night. And with that, John Franklin's going to get 10 points. How about that? Nice use of the rebuttal as we move on to our third question, because it was a busy weekend in the world of combat sports and in the world of mixed martial arts. Let's take a look at the rest of the action. We had 2 Bellator cards. We had the rest of the UFC Auckland card. There were over 50 fights between these 3 events, between Friday and Saturday. So, John Franklin, which one fighter, in your opinion, stole the show over the weekend in MMA with their performance?
Let's start this off with hashtag prisoner of the moment, just to get us prepared for what I'm about to bring at you. But I'll say it like this. She's funk like that. She's fat like that. She's in like that because she swings like that. She jabs like that. She freaks like that. She zooms like that. She's out. She's out. Rebirth is slick. Angela Hill. Short notice fight. She's coming back in there. I'm going to steal. You want to talk about a robbery? I'm about to steal this from somebody I saw on Twitter. Could she be the next Jorge Masvidal? Right? Is that jumping the gun a little bit too much? Maybe. But before the Masvidal fights, that would have been jumping the gun as well before he went on his run. I think that she took a short notice fight and did a lot to help herself. I think that she might be one of the best, one of the next big stars in MMA. And I'm saying that with full understanding that I'm being a prisoner of the moment. Mike?
I thought I was waiting for the back to you. That's why you got me delayed. It's all right. Cole Shelton, who stole the weekend in your opinion in MMA?
Well, I'm not even going to touch that Dublin card. If you're tape delayed, I don't even view that as a real card. Like, get out of here. I think I'm going to UFC Auckland. I'm going Brad Riddell. I think this guy's going to be a star in that region. He's had 2 fights. He's had fight of the night against Jamie Mullarkin, this Mustafayev fight. That arguably could have been fight of the night if Felder Hooker wasn't there. Like, that was probably the second best fight on the card. He brings up the energy, like he was waving his arms during the fight. He's a striking coach for Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski. The Australian, New Zealand crowd's going to get behind him. They're going back to Australia at 241 or 251 for Perth. I think Riddell's going to be on that card. I think he's going to get a ranked guy. His striking, he puts on fun fights because he's primarily a striker. I think he had another great performance. I think he's only going to grow up from here. And especially at lightweight, lightweight, you only need, he can fight one of these big names. If he gets a win, he's right up there as a big star. And this win kind of catapulted him to get a top 15 guy.
Keith, so many fights. Craig Allen and his brother Matt, who, you said you had the shortest answer in between the link century. Matt Allen had the shortest tenure in the history of Loudmouth MMA. But those 2 guys broke down most of those 50-plus fights. I'm sure you didn't watch those, but I'm sure you watched a lot of the fights that actually went down this weekend. Who's your weekend show stealer in MMA?
Well, it was a good day for Big Papa. Had all the women saying, what a man. And I'm agreeing with Cole Shelton. It's Brad Riddell. The guy's now 2-0 in the UFC with back-to-back wins. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He fights out of arguably the best gym, or at least the hottest gym in the world in City Kickboxing. He was an underdog in this fight. I thought he clearly won. I don't think it should have been a split decision. I know some people disagree with me. He showed improvement in his wrestling. He actually took down a high-level wrestler at the end of the fight. The guy's a world champion in kickboxing. The last high-level kickboxer to come out of City Kickboxing, doing pretty well. His name's Israel Adesanya. Listen, my man Cole is right. John is insane in the membrane right now because Angela Hill beat a freaking atomweight that none of us even know how to pronounce her name. Back to you.
Keith, I'm digging this new style right now. Now you're throwing in the 90s theme as well. Davidson, I don't know how much 90s music you know, especially of the hip-hop genre, but who is your weekend show stealer? Oh, he's looking ready. You looking ready to pop.
Ooh. I sit on the side of the fence that believes Nasty Nas is the greatest rapper to ever live. But regardless, I really wanted to say Ricky Bandejas here, and what I will agree with Cole about is tape delay, not getting any credit from me. 0 credit from me. Get your shit figured out, Viacom. Excuse my language. But you couldn't see him in America Live. That being said, I'm going to stay across the Bellator lines because the shorter, kind of weirder looking Tyson Fury doppelganger stole the show on Friday. Mr. Timothy Johnson actually scored a career revitalizing type of win and did not do it at all against any type of scrub by any mean of the imagination. This is a guy that could have been gotten at plus 600, depending on where you were betting. Tim Johnson, obviously, too, fought in the UFC for a while, not on the best stretch of his career at the moment, and coming in against a guy with Tyrell Fortune, like I said, a big underdog on top of an 8-0 record, serious wrestling background. He was considered one of the top 3 wrestlers in the United States at 125 kilograms for a considerable amount of time. And Johnson clipped him and put him out, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. I'm sure that's got to feel good for him. He's my winner of the weekend.
And the winner of this round, Mr. Cole Shelton, gets the 10 points. Some good answers there as we head to question number 4. And then we're going to say goodbye to somebody, possibly. We'll see what happens here. But with all the big events and the big fights going on in combat sports, the biggest event over the weekend, and it wasn't even close, was the highly anticipated rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in Las Vegas. I mean, the fight did huge numbers at the gate. I'm sure the pay-per-view numbers are going to end up being gigantic. But, man, Tyson Fury goes out there and simply outclassed Deontay Wilder. He outdid literally everything Wilder did, from the walkout to the final bell. Once the towel got thrown in, it was all Tyson Fury as he gets the 7th round TKO win after Wilder's co-trainer throws in the towel. So within an hour or so after the fight ends, Tyson Fury was called out, and he wasn't called out by boxers, but he was called out by 2 active and highly ranked UFC heavyweights, one being the world champion in Stipe Miocic, and the other was Francis Ngannou. So Cole, let's begin with you. What did you make of these call-outs by Stipe and Ngannou to Fury? Are you with it, or do you think this is just absolutely ridiculous?
It's so dumb. There's a reason why they're calling them out. Do you see what they were guaranteed? They were guaranteed at least $28 million. There's no wonder why Ngannou and Stipe, who's the UFC heavyweight champion, I think for the last Cormier rematch, I think it was like $750,000 he made. It's not a fight I'd even want to see. It wouldn't even be close. Tyson Fury would outbox Ngannou and Miocic. There's not even a question about it. If you did MMA, Miocic and Ngannou would beat Tyson Fury. We saw Conor Floyd. Everyone thought Conor had a shot, and Floyd dominated that fight. It wasn't even close. He took it. He could have ended that fight whenever he wanted. He made it go on longer because he wanted it to be a show. These boxing, UFC, MMA call-outs need to stop. Unless I want to see a boxer come into MMA, which I think is high and leg just because of the paydays. These UFC fighters need to just start focusing on themselves, because Ngannou's a fight against Rosenstruck next month. Stipe's got to fight Cormier. They have their own tasks at hand, so I don't care to see any of these fights, and I think it's so dumb that they're calling each other out.
Keith, I got to tell you, of all the questions that have come up tonight, this is the one I was looking forward to hearing your answer the most, and hopefully you provide more than you did in the second question. And I have a feeling this is the one. This is the one.